Welcome to this episode of the Better German podcast. We're going to talk about German articles, and I'm starting off with the question if German speaking people really know all the genders for the nouns, and if they know all of the German gender rules. And I'm going to try to demystify this area a little bit. There's a lot of questions, and there is also a lot of weird answers. At least I think they're weird in this area, and I'm going to try to debunk them a little bit, okay? So let's get started with this thing. First of all, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, if you're very new to German, I actually suggest you to start at the beginning of the podcast and ideally start at the episode 1, but there is also a very early episode. This is episode 5 about the German articles. But to give you a 1-minute introduction, I don't know if I'll make it in 1 minute, but every word in German that is like table, street, beauty, house, feeling, and so on. So in English, we can say F feeling or def feeling. These are nouns. And in German, each one of those nouns falls actually into 3 different categories. Each one falls into one of those 3 categories. And these we call genders. That's just the name of it. And it's a very grammatical thing. But that's just how German is organized. German is not the only language that does that. There are a lot of languages that have genders. Like Italian has genders, French has genders. All of the Slavic languages have genders, but English doesn't have them. The way how these are seen is mainly with the articles. For example, a house in English, a house or der Haus is in German das Haus. That is considered neutral, so it is neither male or female. Maybe the male and female is a little hard because obviously most of these things are objects or not even objects, just ideas, and they don't have an obvious gender. They're not a man or a woman. But anyway, these are called genders, and the ones that we have are male, female, and neutral. I think it is probably easier, if you're not familiar with the concept, to just consider it 3 different categories. And one is der, and that's the one that we also use for male people. And der is also called male, männlich in German. Der Mann is the man. Männlich is like a man. Then we have the second category, that's with the article die. And die is also what we use for women, and it's called female, which is weiblich in German. And then the third category is das, and that is neutral. That is neither male or female. So you have a few examples. We have der Tisch, that's the table, der Tisch. Or we have die Blume, the flower, die Blume. We have die Frau, the woman. We have der Mann, the man. And we have das Haus, the house. And we have das Buch, the book. That's the super fast introduction. And that can be sometimes a little confusing, and people ask a lot of questions about it. And I think just because of these many questions, people are trying to come up with answers to make it easier for them. Now, here is the real thing. First of all, I'm going to answer the question, yes, German-speaking people do know these articles. They do not make mistakes a lot of times with it, if they know the word. If they have never heard the word before, they will also not know the article. There is no secret rule baked into it that will tell us, in most of the cases, or in many cases, what the article is. That's the first thing. So there is no secrets that we're hiding. But people know them. And the easiest thing that I can say about this is consider the fact, if that the thing is der, die, or das, just to be part of the word. And the easiest way of learning it is just simply learning it with the der, die, or das. Because, for example, there's other languages that don't even they have the categories, but they don't even have the articles. And I think that that's even more difficult. So that's that. Now, so basically that's the first thing that you have to learn. There is no magic trick. There is no set of rules that you just learn and then you can figure it out from there on out. How we understand them and how we know them basically is simply because we've heard them over and over and over, and we've said them over and over and over, and that's why it becomes natural, so to say. It is simply repetition. It's hearing it again and again and again, and then you will know it. I'm going to look at it from the other side to maybe make it a little easier, because I think most of what happens here is that people think it's overwhelming, and then they ask and they get like, yes, but isn't there a way? And then teachers or other students are trying to come up with something. Not always does that actually make it easier. So I'm gonna try to make it a little easier by both taking, if you have the idea away of you that this is very hard or very difficult to understand, maybe taking a few of those questions that you could actually have around this area and answer them as well. So, first of all, if you want to be somehow fluent in German, you will have to learn about 3,000 words. This is true for most languages. You have to learn roughly 3,000 words to basically communicate. That doesn't mean you speak perfectly. That doesn't mean you can work easily or something like that. That's just how you can somehow be fluent. You can make yourself understandable, and you can understand. And then obviously keep learning from that. So 3,000 words is not that much. If you think of it, if you learn 10 words every day in a year and you leave out a few, you don't work on the weekends or something on that, then within a year, you can have enough vocabulary to somehow get somewhere. So about 30 or 40% of these are nouns and have an article. So you'll have to learn, let's say, roughly 1,000 nouns to get started. And now there is one piece of good news here that actually helps. A lot of nouns are actually made up of two others. For example, you could have das Haus, that's the house, and then another word could be das Wohnhaus. That's like a living house. That's basically an apartment house, or a house where people live in. And it's always, anything with house at the end is going to be das. So, das Haus, das Wohnhaus, das Ferienhaus, that's a vacation home, das Ferienhaus, das Landhaus, that's a country house, das Toilettenhaus, the toilet house, like on a camping place, camping site, and so on. So that is something, if you've learned this one house, this one word with the article, every other word, and we have a lot, we do that a lot in German, that has house as a second part will be das. And then there is things that are not full words, but they're parts of words. For example, if you have the word for the newspaper, that's Zeitung, And then if you have another word with ung at the end, UNG, so it's die Zeitung, the newspaper, die Wohnung, the apartment, und die Meinung, the opinion. So these are all die. So there are some more like that. But again, these are not rules that you have to learn, but these happen. So let's say the first word of these you learn is die Zeitung, the newspaper. And you learn it and you use it and you learn it as part of the vocabulary of the word. And you repeat it and you do this over and over. And then you know, it's die Zeitung. Good. And then you come across this other word and it's die Wohnung. And you go like, it's die. Oh yeah, makes sense. It also ends on UNG. It has the same ending as die Zeitung. And then it starts dawning on you, probably all of those that are UNG at the end are going to be die. Anyway, it is going to be very easy already for you to remember that that Wohnung, by the way, is the apartment. So that it's die Wohnung. And then the next word that you might come across could be die Meinung, the opinion. And then you go already like, oh yeah, sure, it's die, makes sense. Okay, so that's one of the things that are going to help. So at the end of the day, you probably have to learn the articles in the beginning for maybe 500 words. But again, you don't sit down and try to memorize 500 articles. You learn them as part of the words. And then that's the next thing, the next biggest mistake that people probably make is they're trying to memorize them, trying to memorize the articles. Actually, it's even not working if you're trying to memorize the words. Don't try to memorize them. What you do is you get a word, you first figure out how to pronounce that word. That's, by the way, something that's a big mistake I've seen with German students or English students. They've never even said that word. When you learn with me, that's the first step. When you learn with me, you will either have an audio, like in the podcast, or you will have a video. Many of my courses are video courses or hybrid courses, meaning you have a video and then we get together online or in person to practice. Or it's a complete live course. So the first step always, actually the first step is you do write up the word. So I lied. But after that, the first step is to pronounce the word, to figure out how to say the word. And this is super easy these days because many dictionaries, or almost all the dictionaries that are, for sure all online dictionaries will have, usually they will even have a spoken thing and you can just click on it and listen to it and you just say it and then you listen to it again and you say it. And you spend some time with doing that because if you don't know how to say the word, it's pretty useless because the first reason why you're learning a language is you want to communicate to other people, and the main way of communicating is speaking. Unless you really learn German just to read German literature. I don't know, maybe that exists. I think it's a little rare. You want to learn to speak. So the first thing is you speak. And when you learn how to say it, every time you say it, you repeat the article with it. So you don't just say Zeitung, but you always say die Zeitung. And maybe it's die Zeitung. You listen to it again and then you're like, no, not quite right. Okay, I'll try it again. Die Zeitung. Okay, listen to it again. Oh, okay, die Zeitung. And then you say it a couple of more times until it's easy. But every time you say die with it. And then you practice the word. And you could, for example, one of the easiest ways of practicing any word is to make sentences with it. So you could say very simple things. Something like, die Zeitung ist groß. The newspaper is big. Ich habe keine Zeitung. I have no newspaper. If you are very, very new and these are your first words, you can even mix the sentences. By the way, if you're very, very new and these are your first words, if you sign up to the Better German podcast community, there is a intro course that will get you through your first words and get you started in learning German. You can sign up for that if you go to bettergerman.info/community. Anyway, so that's the second thing, the memorizing. I've talked about it. So basically what happens, to go back to the actual question, is do native speakers all know that? So yes, they know that. They don't go like window, Fenster. What was that gender again? They just know it's das Fenster. And sometimes when we actually, for some reason that we cannot come up with it, we will actually use it in a sentence. I'll go and say, er öffnet das Fenster. He opens the window. And das Fenster. And then I'll go like, oh yeah, okay, it's das. Because I've heard it so many times that I know it by saying it like that. And every learner can do that too. You just have to keep repeating it. And you have to read things and you have to watch TV or watch TV shows with subtitles. If you're a beginner, for sure, I suggest to use subtitles in any case, and read books. By the way, I'm super excited because if you're following the podcast, you maybe know I'm working a lot on my course, and I'm recording videos currently for the Get Talking course. So I'm ahead of my students, and I've just added stories. So when you do the Get Talking course or other courses with me, you have texts to read that they're very cool. They have each one of them has audio files with it, and they're very good for the level. Like, you get the right texts. You can choose, you have a choice, but you get texts that are good for your level of learning. Good. So the goal is not, back to our articles, the goal is not to memorize them, but you're learning them together with the articles. And yeah, so the thing that you have to understand is you don't have to learn 50 rules, and you also don't have to memorize 1,000 nouns. You're using them one after one, and then you will be okay. So to summarize this part, no, there is no secret trick. Yes, we know them. There are some useful patterns. We German speakers know them because they've just used them many, many times. And the trick is to learn nouns together with their articles from the beginning. And don't panic. You will make mistakes. That's totally okay. All right. So that's the end of this episode. And actually, there is a second part of it. And in the second part, I'm going to answer a lot of Q&As. So I'm going to answer typical questions students ask about articles. And I'm going to do some myth busting here. If you have any questions whatsoever around articles, maybe yours is one of them. And if not, if there is any question about the area of any of the podcast episodes that you feel wasn't answered, you can write to me. You can write to me at podcast@bettergerman.info, and maybe your question will actually become one of the next articles that I write on my blog or one of the next episodes. And I will, in any case, try to answer your question. Okay. So I hope you were enjoying this. Tune in the next time. If you're ready to learn German, you can definitely check out my homepage and my courses. I'll link it in the show notes and see you soon. Bye-bye. Quick break here. So if you're new here, Better German is a podcast and it's a learning ecosystem. We have courses, group sessions, one-on-one resources, everything you actually need to speak German, not just study it. And if you're wondering where you fit in, do you actually know what your real German level is? Not what certificate you have, not what you think, but where you actually stand today. I've built a short placement test that tells you exactly that. And here's the difference. I personally look at every result and I'll send you a real answer, not an automated email. Me actually looking at your German. It's at bettergerman.info/test and it's also in the show notes. Takes about 10 minutes. Back to the episode. Before you go, if you've been listening for a while and you're thinking, okay, I actually want to do something about my German, here is where to start. Go to bettergerman.info/test and take the placement test. It's short, it's free, and I'll personally look at what you sent me and tell you exactly where you stand and what makes sense for you next. Maybe that's one of my courses. Maybe it's something else entirely. I'll tell you honestly. Better German isn't just a podcast. It's a whole learning ecosystem. Courses, group sessions, one-on-one lessons, mini resources, but all starts with you knowing where you actually stand. And if you're enjoying the podcast, share it with someone who's trying to learn German. That's the best thing you can do for me and maybe for them too. The link is in the show notes and see you in the next episode.